Hi everyone, I'm in Dolphin Bar in the south inner city today, and today I want to talk about the Irish tricolour that's flying proudly here on lampposts around Dolphin House, an area that was left behind for years and years by deliberate political decisions that left many tenants in the council flat complex behind me in deplorable conditions. And still to this date, they've been campaigning for well over 25 years, and still only half of the apartment blocks have been brought back up to specification. Many still live in absolute abject conditions in those flat complexes. And across the canal behind me, in the Grand Canal, just up there, you have Seagull Flats and Rutland Avenue just in the distance. You might be able to pick it out here. And many tenants I know in there who are living in deplorable conditions, absolutely ignored by the Irish political establishment for years and years. And what's important around the flying of flags is that there's a real pushback against the whole sense of Irish identity and Irish culture, heritage, in the push towards globalisation. And they're trying to make this the top of the council agenda tonight. The councillors are due to reconvene after a long summer holidays tonight, and top of their agenda is the issues around flags on lampposts in Dublin City. A lot of working class areas such as Ballyfermot, Coolock, Finglas, the south and north inner city, you see a lot of flags flying high in those areas. Of course, big strong working class areas, people who have been left behind by the globalist agenda, left behind because of the neoliberal agenda, left behind by the Irish political establishment, who aren't interested in representing the needs of ordinary people who are struggling and suffering day to day in terms of being left behind by deliberate policies. Now at the same time, top of their agenda now is around removing the flags from these lampposts, because according to a Labour Party councillor, Darragh Moriarty, he said it's a weaponisation of the tricolour used by malicious agitators who seek to use our flag as a means to mark territory, essentially, in terms of divide people, in terms of its also he was speaking about a capture of flag as being hateful, and it must be met head on by the island's largest local authority, Dublin City Council, in terms of taking the lead on this to remove these from these areas. And this was echoed as well by a Fine Gael councillor, who also said that it's an attempt by a minority to pursue this agenda in terms of more division, and they spoke about the R word, of course, which is absolute nonsense and complete and utter garbage. Interestingly enough, top of the agenda isn't about the crime chaos in Dublin City. Over the weekend there was an attack early on Saturday morning of a man in his 40s who still, I understand, in serious condition in St James's Hospital. This follows the latest amount of knife attacks that have taken place across our city, which is completely unsafe, but according to the Irish political establishment is deemed as being very safe, and like people like Jim O'Callaghan, who said that Dublin is a safe city, well, many of us would attest to something completely different to the narrative they're spinning. Now, of course, this is a massive attack by the globalists on our whole sense of identity, and of course Micheál Martin said they want nothing to do with the backward looking idea of sovereignty, but at the same time they're quick enough jumping up and down for Ukrainian sovereignty all the time. And there's no issue in flying Ukrainian flags, for instance, in many well-to-do areas such as Churchtown and other areas of Dublin, where they're still flying to this day, and the local authorities have permitted the flying of Ukrainian flags. Even one councillor said they should call Orwell Road, rename it as New Ukraine Road. This is the ludicrous nonsense of the narrative that's been spun towards the ordinary people. And there's no issues in terms of flying other flags in around Dublin City, for instance the Palestinian flags, issues around any flag of many other countries. But when it comes to your tricolour, that signifies peace on our island, it's deemed as being a hateful message. But of course there's protocol in place in terms of flying flags, and of course respect for a flag is paramount in terms of what it represents. And many of those who stood up for Irish independence, struggle for Irish freedom through years of risings, uprisings and rebellions, a struggle for independence, and that's a massive strike of many of our ancestors for their independence, which we must carry on today in terms of standing up for what the flag represents. Of course, people like James Connolly stood up under the flag in the GPO, where he stood alongside Patrick Pearse, who read the proclamation in April 1916. And coincidentally, Patrick Pearse himself spoke at a monster meeting that was held here around late August 1915 at the Towerfield House grounds about an anti-conscription rally, and of course getting people to join the Irish volunteers, because at that time there was a big push towards the conscription of young Irishmen by the British Empire to fight their imperialist wars, while ordinary Irish people were used as cannon fodder, and as well many who stayed and struggled for independence. And of course we remember John Redmond, who tried to divide the Irish volunteers and held many meetings to use the same narrative and spin that they're using today. We have to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here, and we have to fight for our values and all this type of nonsense, which again was an imperialist war, much the same as the European Union is driving into now at the moment as well. And that's why we should have no hand, act or part in what is being driven by the Irish political establishment. We should be standing under a flag. We can go back to the St. Patrick's blue flag, the flag with the harp. We can also go back with the whole struggle of the Starry Plough with the Irish Citizens Army, where the people of Ireland should own everything from the plough to the stars, much the same as what Sean O'Casey spoke about in his famous play as well. But this is the nonsense that the Irish establishment are pushing down the throats of ordinary people. They're trying to attack working class communities and really attack the whole idea of your pride, and to grind people down. Micheál Martin himself also spoke that the Irish weren't homogenous and all this type of nonsense, trying to degrade and run down the whole sense of our national pride. And as I said, refer back to what Martin himself said, that they want nothing to do with the backward looking idea of sovereignty, but at the same time he stands up for Ukrainian sovereignty. So it's absolute nonsense. It's anti-Irishness, it's anti-working class, it's absolutely disgraceful what's happening in Dublin City Council. But this is the nonsense that these elected officials are trying to ram down the throats of ordinary people. So thanks for the support for wet and blustery Dolphins Barn here in Dublin today. And of course Eamon Cant lived quite close by in the local area as well. Another signatory of the proclamation in 1916 who struggled and made a strike out for Irish independence in many locations near here, such as the South Dublin Union and now St James's Hospital, Marylebone Lane, and these areas, who were massive historic significance in Ireland. And that strike for independence should never be forgotten, least of all by these sellout political cowards who are calling themselves leaders, nothing but branch managers and shelf stackers for Brussels. Thanks for the support, please subscribe, and slán go fóill. Take care.